on the agenda, so we'll bring this meeting to order. We'll stand and do the pledge. Pam, do you want to lead us in pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Larson.
Here.
Kelly? Is he calling in?
No, they're evacuating.
Oh, he won't be here. Eaton? Lyman?
Here.
Mann?
Here.
Westwood?
Here.
Whistler? Here.
First of all, I'd like to start with just a quick statement here, and I'd like to apologize for not providing the contract in the packet for last meeting. That's all on to me, and hopefully this meeting will clarify that, and we can wade through this thing. The contract was voted down, and it was brought up by Dave Westwood to have it brought up at the next meeting, which that is what we're doing right now. And I would ask Dave to, following the rules of procedure, Part 6, Section 1, Item 4A, I would like a motion to reconsider. Please, Dave.
Let me go to 6-1A. I think where it's an item, we don't need it, but I'm happy to, I move to reconsider the contract for the city attorney.
Second.
Okay. So, it's been moved and seconded. This is a debate on the contract and the contract only. So, we may start that debate right now at the table. Yes.
I'll open it with a piece of information that I was provided, is that,
Is this having to do with the contract?
no, more about budget.
Okay.
Budget.
This is on the contract. Dave, what kind of changes do you have?
I don't have changes. I guess I can summarize my notes, and I'll try to keep it short, realizing that there's some people in the fire line. I did receive some calls, some people who'd had some questions, and was able to discuss that. I will say that what I'm hearing pretty universally, and by that I mean not what some folks might call the usual suspects. What I'm hearing is that the root of this is kind of a trust issue. There's a lot of people that are apprehensive that we've had a series of contracts with attorneys, kind of unknown quantities, as it were, and then we find ourselves in a contractual obligation for a period of time, which the proposed contract does. The only thing that I have heard that is potentially a counter argument actually does have to do with budget, and so I'd probably be curious to hear what Teresa has, and I say that not knowing what it is, but when I do my research and I look at it, between the contract, I still don't know what the loading is. We'd asked last time, Lonnie, did you get a chance to figure that out?
Yes.
Do you have a real number you can share on that?
So benefits, not including the salary of $65,000. Benefits would be $32,505, but that is on the high end of the insurance. So if it's not the family insurance, then that number drops a lot.
Considerably.
Mhm.
So at 65 plus 32 gets us up to 97, and that doesn't include 6.7 weeks of vacation and sick time at 32 per hour. So that puts us well up over 100,000 with the load.
What do you mean? That
So-
including that
So-
wage is figured at,
That 32,000 includes the 3 weeks of vacation time that we pay
that's
and 2 weeks
figured
of
into
sick
the
time.
total. Yes, the hours are figured into that.
Into the ci- okay.
Part of the annual.
Okay, so we're looking at 97,000, and I think my notes from Pete's comment last time, I was looking for the original contract before, and what we were looking at was 96,000, which actually puts the other contract being less expensive. So my suspicion last time was that this contract, particularly with, when you look at benefits, really, if there's any financial impact, it's negligible. So my input is that, and that would be the one thing that I would consider a potential counter argument or reason to consider a long-term contract. But the overwhelming response I'm getting from folks is, we've got an offer that can be a month to month. We're not tied into it. And
Let's, I'll call point of order.
Okay.
We're talking about the contract that is placed in front of us.
okay, well,
We're
and
not here to debate other contracts.
that's fair. And so I guess I will summarize. I do not see a benefit in signing a contractual obligation without some benefit of doing so. So, yeah, and like I said, that's the overwhelming response I've gotten from people is, let's not obligate ourselves to a contract until someone has had an opportunity to earn that trust.
So what I got from our last meeting was that they wanted to change it to a one-year contract. From emails that have gone through that wanted a one-year probationary period. And what other changes do you want to this contract?
Mayor, those are brought up that I still think one or the other would take care of, that people had in mind where a change of a mayor or a probationary period, there would be an opportunity to revisit the fit with the city and or if it was, a good fit, continuation. But at 1 year, the idea of the 1 year period or 1 year probationary period was what I recalled from the last discussion.
And I'm good with
Right.
that. I think that's a change that we should probably make.
And I recall initially proposing that it extended through December 1st, and Lonnie raised that it would make more sense to extend it a month or two in, and so I had changed that to the end of February. That might put me in a position to consider it, but like I said, I think if we weren't doing a contract, or if it was a non-contractual comment, it was as services needed, that would certainly fall under the umbrella that I would say that the executive position has the ability to make a determination. And so if we take the contract element or the extending contract element out of it, I think I could go back to the constituents and say, that's why I said, absent a compelling reason, I'm happy to support the executive in making those types of decisions. I know, like I said, the conversation last week had to do with the cost of it. And one of the things that I looked at is the spending that we're doing now. We've actually spent $4,000 more than options that had been presented to us. And I know we're not talking about the other options in the past, but we've actually spent more because of the decisions that were made by going with two different attorneys and hourly rates. So I think those decisions have already cost us some more money.
And I see your point there, and I believe it was $20,000 for 45 days is what we paid the other two, but it was a necessary thing to have council coverage.
And I don't disagree with that, but and again, just as a reference point only, had we accepted the whole kit and caboodle contract that Ray had proposed, it would have been $8,000 a month at a fixed fee.
Okay.
And so that was my thought.
Okay, so let's get back to this contract that's in front of us.
Allergies. I'll come at it from a different angle. It's not a budget item. It's a what if. Not termination of contract, but conflict, right? So if there is a conflict of interest because of representation of a client that's existing, it happens to be now, the need for city prosecution, if there are a number of those cases, how does this contract say that those shall be covered?
Let's just talk, Ms. Dennison wants to give us answer that question for him. This is Dennison Butler, by the way.
How's it going?
Right.
I can't answer that question, and I talked to Alex Nixon. So in my current role, I do defense work, and so there's gonna be times where there'd be a prosecution of an individual who I've defended in the past. And so in those cases, usually the county attorneys would be the one who would prosecute those cases. And then vice versa, there's often times where they would have a conflict, and I would be the one who would be prosecuting those cases.
So it'll be passed off to a different court.
Correct, or a different attorney.
Mayor, do we know what the financial
Thank you, Dennis.
impact of that is? Is it a paid service? Is it a prearranged agreement we have with the county?
I don't think that, I apologize if I.
That's, the rules say we get to talk to him, so I'm not giving you the cold shoulder, I'm speaking to the mayor.
Go ahead and answer that.
I don't think it's a paid agreement, but I don't know. I would have to talk to Alex Nixon more about the arrangement. I don't think there's a financial arrangement, if that makes sense. Just because I know there's going to be times where they would take the cases, and I know there's times where I would take cases from them. I don't know about the financial aspect of it, though,
Thank you.
of course.
So, Mayor, is there any reason that, I mean, if that's the expectation, that if there's a conflict of interest, I don't know if it needs to be worded in here or how it gets worded or captured, that is the management, that's the plan for management of any conflicts of that type of right, where there's a client that's been represented by the attorney in the past and there's a conflict of that sort. How does that need to be, how does that get managed? Where is it put down in writing anywhere?
Let's put it in.
Yeah, okay, because wasn't sure if it
Yeah.
belonged in the contract or somewhere else.
Well, if you feel that it belongs in that contract, then just spell it out that that's the way it's going.
It didn't address it at all, so and
Okay.
it's something that I think, because and also it would be nice to know how the city would cover those costs.
If there is cost.
Right.
Okay.
Mayor, I would just point out that on page 3, under conflict of interest, it does just state that employees shall avoid conflicts of interest as defined by Montana law. Now, the Bar Association already requires that, so I don't anticipate a problem there. I do recognize and acknowledge that it doesn't spell out how we're going to handle it or financially, and I don't know that it has a need to be an employee contract. I think it just needs to be a factor that we do consider in our decision-making process, that we assume that there will probably be some additional costs in addressing that. And I would suspect that if we have anybody who's local, that's a likely scenario. I don't know that we need to spell it out in the contract. I think we've got that conflicts will be avoided, and that's already done from 14 directions, so that's not going to happen.
And like you said, I think when we have an attorney that is practicing in town here, we're going to have that conflict. And further down the line even, there's going to be conflicts that come up in our court that, it's just going to happen. And I think I'm with Dave on, what it does cover in the conflict of interest is acceptable to me.
And to me.
And I guess I look at Lonnie as far as our financial part, if we need to,
Well, the budget isn't finalized.
it's not
I mean,
finalized, so
it's
I think what we need to do then, we'll just definitely check with Alex Nixon and see what that arrangement is. If we need to place more money into the attorney's budget for that, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, I think I agree. It would be a good thing to have an estimation of what that's going to cost the city if there is a cost. I don't know what typical scenario there is that would say, you know, how many numbers there would be in cases like that, or something that gets us by without, at the end of the year, finding out that, whoa, you know, there are a larger number than we thought, or maybe not.
Where else are we on the contract?
Did you want me to bring up what Sam told me?
Yes, what's,
So Sam Painter did look over those.
Thank you.
There was just a couple things. He said with the probationary or the 6 months, he did say that Montana is, default is 6 months. So if there was concerns about the 6 months that was put in here, Montana defaults to 6 months probation.
Does that mean it can be changed, or?
It can be
Just in the
changed, but he
absence
said just be aware that Montana defaults to
Right,
6 months. If he thought that that came out of nowhere for the 6 months, because that was brought up. So,
right. So it's almost, if we, I'm thinking about the changes that we had discussed last time, and again, for debate purposes, if we had 12-month probationary period or a 1-year term for this contract, they would pretty much do the same thing. So it might be redundant. I don't know. That's what I'm questioning. We could discuss that.
I think we just put it in both ways. And just have a 1-year contract with 1-year probation. Dave?
Mayor, I have a question that is for you. I'm making some assumptions, and I guess maybe I want to validate the assumption, so I'll ask the question directly. What is the compelling reason, from your perspective, to go with a contracted term of employment as opposed to a non-contracted? And I haven't been involved in the negotiations. I don't know if Mr. Dennison would be interested in a.
First name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Butler. Well, that makes it way easier.
I'm good either way.
Yeah, I said, the good news is, we don't know each other, so I hope you read into that there is nothing personal here whatsoever, right? There's no agenda, but for the mayor, what is the compelling reason for you to go with a contract of employment as opposed to a contract that is just an agreement for ongoing services until such time as one party says, hey, it's been fun, but I'm done?
Like I say, right now, I'm talking about this contract here.
And I am.
And the contract, as we discussed last meeting, and Tom was really in favor of it, that our staff here needs coverage, which we're talking about in here. We're also talking about, in the contract here, we're talking about Dennison will spend Monday day here in the days of court. The one thing that I did want to also put in here was to attend council meetings. We did not have that in writing.
Yeah, but you did say that, that's right.
Yeah.
It should be in there.
Right. I saw that in the
It's not in the
job
contract.
description, but not the contract.
Actually, if it's in the job description, it's part of the contract.
It's appended.
So the contract is appended in, so that's already covered. There's no need to address it.
I did find that, yeah.
So, if I understand, Mayor, then it was an availability to staff is what you thought would be the benefit of a contracted employee,
Of this contract.
of this contract. Thank you.
can I say the last thing that Sam recommended?
Yes, you may.
So on page 4, under termination of contract, item B, He said to leave the first sentence in there, the employee, employer agree that reasonable and sufficient notice of termination of employment other than for cause by the employer is 1 month. He said to remove the rest of that paragraph. So completely remove termination, other for cause or at blah, blah, blah. He said that if it was ever to go to litigation, that would come back onto that sentence in there. He said there's, you have termination laws and you would fall into those. This, he said, was just not needed in there.
Mhm.
So,
So I'm confused because I'm looking at 4E and I only see one sentence.
B
B.
is an
Oh,
boy.
The one that I said no next to in great big things. So we ended after 1 month and get termination other than for cause, just get rid of all of that.
Right, same thing I had marked up too, that.
So those were the only two things that Sam recommended.
Pointed out.
Yep. Oh, and the FSLA exempt that was brought up, that is, they do not get overtime.
They're an exempt employee, that, I looked it up, thank
Okay.
you.
You're
Yeah. Whatever it takes to get the job done. Well, yeah.
Any more discussion?
I know that Dave has said how many people have called him. I've got a lot of people calling me who are familiar with Dennison and his work, and they are very pleased that we're considering him. And that was not just one or two, but that was several people. I did not solicit that, they called me.
Right, and I'll say it again, it's not about the person, it's the contract for me.
Right, exactly. More discussion at the table on the contract.
I am strongly in support of having a full-time or regular city attorney, both for the police department and for the city employees, city clerk and so on. And I don't have any problem with the contract as such. However, I have to assume that Mr. Butler and the city will work on this in good faith.
Yes.
And when conflicts of interest come up, which they inevitably will, because this is a small town, it's a Red Lodge. And, I certainly understand having Mr. Butler or whoever it was having, being able to handle private work as well. But I want to be sure that we're on the same page as far as the city's needs coming first in terms of time and resources and so on, because it's a substantial expense on the city's part. That's my caveat on that.
My
Dave?
My 2 cents thought on that, Tom, is attorneys like municipalities as clients because they pay their bills and they pay their bills regularly and on time. And so if you've got a client that pays their bills, you tend to prioritize them, just take care of them for that
Well-
reason and that reason. But it's one of those things where the free hand of economics steps in and makes sure it's
No,
taken care of.
I know what you're saying, but again, this is a small town in southern Montana. It's not Los Angeles, so. I
And
think-
isn't that lucky?
Well, yes, we are, but we have to acknowledge the fact that everybody's involved with everybody in this town. That's all there is to it. Can't get away from that.
That's right.
The commercial as well as the ranching community and people who live here part-time and the tourists and so on. So, and we, like as with Teresa and Dave and everybody else, I got a lot of input about this from several different points of view. So I guess what I'm saying is I strongly support having an attorney on essentially full-time. Well, I hate to say it's not full
A
time.
regular attorney, I
A
think.
regular, and I don't wanna say on call, because that implies, well, we can't get them, you know. The idea, the main reason for having someone, particularly someone who has an office here in town, is that when the police need somebody, or when Lonnie needs somebody, we don't have to wait a week to get an answer. That's very, very critical in part, in my case. And I think the contract covers that. As I say, assuming that everybody is operating in good faith, we should be okay here.
Okay. Yes, true.
Mayor, I'm sorry, it's a little niggle, that's still bothering me about, it's not a bother, it's more that, I'm thinking about just cause and not understanding fully what that is unless I go out and read pages and pages of code. And I imagine it's open to, you know, anybody's interpretation. And this does tie to the budget, once again, should we find that, just as a scenario, should there be so many conflicts of interest that the rate of which we're outsourcing goes up tremendously, causes financial detriment to the city, is that a just cause? Where at some point
So
we
that
could say, if we,
So we can get rid of them?
well, I don't want to get rid of anybody, no, I'm just saying, is that ever a reason to say we have to terminate this contract because there's so many conflicts of interest that we can't afford to keep outsourcing? Would that be an example of a just cause?
That's a lawyer question, I wish we had one.
This is why I worry.
You know, and I think that's why we had Sam Painter review this, and he
Okay.
came up with his suggestions.
Mhm.
I'm not up on Montana laws either,
That's why we have an attorney.
and that's why we ran
Why we need an
it by
attorney.
Sam also. That's where I'm at on that.
So we don't know what we don't know.
So the main thing that we need to know, that does not really pertain to this contract, is talking with Alex Nixon and seeing what the exchange of services are. If there is a cost to that, we haven't finalized the budget yet, we'll work those numbers into the budget, and then that budget will come to you.
Okay.
In all the years I've been sitting at this table, we've had an outside attorney under contract until we had Rebecca. And there was never a time that I can remember when there was a conflict of interest where the city did not take first place. So if we have, those times we've had an attorney under contract, the city always came first.
And the difference I'm seeing, just so you understand where I'm coming from, is that she didn't have her private practice as well. She was full-time.
She could have though.
But she didn't.
But
So-
she's the only one that we had that was, had an office here and did nothing but city business.
So we didn't see a number of cases.
Let's get back to okay, I'm gonna bring it back, we're here to go over the contract. We're not over here to talk about the old city attorney or the contract attorney, we're talking about this employment contract right
Right.
now.
I only said that
Just
because
cause.
in support of this contract.
I think that's always gonna be for all of us. Really. Denison, yeah,
I did.
Okay. you're gonna talk about just cause?
No, I'm not
Okay.
on conflicts of interest. I know, it sounds like there's a big question about conflicts of interest. I know just in the prosecution, they always arise. So even when Becky was here and then previous attorneys, they always arise. And right now, in the past, Hallie Bishop has been coming out, and even before then, Hallie Bishop from Dawson County, there's been exchanges of attorneys and cases between Carbon County and Red Lodge. So that won't be something new. That's been ongoing, and even if I wasn't involved, that's always ongoing.
And we've never
been charged
for
for
Yeah,
those.
for those.
Okay.
There's been times when Rebecca's gone down there and we've had them come up here, just because of conflicts. So I will clarify that with Alex.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion at the table? Okay.
Mayor, last comment, I promise, I think, maybe mostly. To your point, this conversation comes down to discussion of this contract. As if my notes are accurate during this conversation, there have been 2 proposed amendments. One would be on page 1, commencement date and term, item C, and we could potentially have a discussion about the date. I am, in my mind, looking at an end of January or, let's make it the end of February date with Lonnie's recommendation from the last time. I'm assuming that because it's fairly short term. And I'm just using that for my vote because what happens is I count 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm looking at our council rules of procedures that we adopted in February of this year. And it does say that adopt a resolution or ordinance or pass any measure. It requires 4 unless a greater number is required by law. So
And
basically,
you need to go a little bit further, and talk about bringing it back up to the table. And, requires a simple majority for adoption.
well, to bring it to the table requires a simple majority. To adopt a measure requires 4. So those are 2, because I did read specifically that part to make sure that I understood that. It says a motion to reconsider requires a simple majority for adoption. So that's the motion to reconsider, not the actual passing of the measure. So my point is,
And the way I am reading it, if you look at number 4, shall be made by a member of the prevailing side, but may be seconded by a member of another member.
yeah,
It shall be debated and requires a simple majority of adoption.
So
Well-
doesn't charter trump rules of procedure?
so charter is first, and the charter specifies that for an ordinance or a resolution, it does require 4. So we as a council cannot change what action is done. We couldn't as a council say it only takes 3 or a majority.
And that's on a resolution or an ordinance.
Yeah, that's on a resolution or an ordinance. But because the charter doesn't specify for other measures, then it's to us. And so if we passed it with anything less than 4 per section 4, I would challenge it on a point of order. But I'd rather have a discussion than get to that, because what I'm looking at is the 2 amendments were the term of the contract, and I'm considering February just because I'm trying to make it the most palatable to my mind and the folks that I've heard from, and the striking of the second term on second sentence on page 4 that talked about the 6 months. And so going back to the specifics of the mayor's request, all we're debating is this contract. And to me, this contract creates a tie, a commitment, and it doesn't offer a financial benefit to doing it. It doesn't represent a financial savings, and those 2 things are a conflict to me. I think I might have heard in some of the comments from Mr. Butler that he may be open to arrangement that does not have a date certain in it. But in order to get to that point, we would basically have to vote no on this contract. I have 0 problem with the mayor pursuing services of Mr. Butler. I have no knowledge of that. I'm just hesitant to tie us to anything without seeing what the benefit is. And I hear the regular, the cost one has kind of been dismissed now because that's not really a factor. And I think we've got options available to regular. So just voting on this contract even if I put those two terms in that were absolute deal killers for me, I still don't know that I'm on board.
Teresa.
So I want to make sure I understand. You're saying that if we reduce this to 1 year, which your preference is February, and if there's really no other difference, then what's the difference between an employee with a contract versus just a straight contract? The costs are greater as an employee for the same services as contract?
They're just, the cost isn't a factor. It basically, if we look at it, it's negligible if anything, and it actually, but to the mayor's point, it's this specific contract we're looking at. And so to me, when I say, why do you tie your, so let me put it this way. 2 guys show up on my yard. One of them
Okay,
says,
no story time. We're talking about this contract right now.
So
this
just
is tied to the factor, but that's okay.
So they're evacuating Washoe now, so
Okay.
we're going to have
Let's-
to leave.
Yes. Oh, kiddo.
So,
Do you just want to show us how to turn
no,
things off?
if you guys are close, it's
Let's get-
okay. It's
Let's
not
just let it
very,
run.
we're in the morning.
Okay. Any other discussion at the table? Teresa?
In a debate, it's important to understand each other's meanings and what's being said in order to make statements about the contract clear. I would like to hear what Dave has to say.
Okay, Dave?
I'm just looking for an analogy here. If 2 guys show up at my door and one of them says,
No.
I'll mow your lawn for $50 a month. If you don't like the job I do, 30 days notice, we're good. If another guy shows up and says, I'll mow your lawn for $45 a month, but I need you to sign a 2-year contract or a 6-month contract. My personal inclination is that cost is negligible, and I'm going to go with the $50 a month just because I don't yet have an established trust relation. I don't know anything bad about either one of them. I just don't see the point of tying myself down without a meaningful reward for doing it. And so I'm going to pay a little bit more just because I have freedom to decide. I have every expectation that Mr. Butler will excel at his job, and that 6 months down the road, 8 months down the road, we will all sit around and have a chuckle and a conversation and say, wasn't that dumb of us to be worried about it? And I'll still be perfectly comfortable saying, no, we covered our bases. I don't feel bad about that. So I'm done. Thank you, Mayor.
A 1-year contract isn't a long time. I would say whoever this contract was about, I would never sign a 6-month contract. I would never sign a 6-month contract. I mean, a year is actually a short amount of time. It gives the new administration 6 months to see how that person's doing, and then that contract is up for renewal. I will tell you, and I'm getting off the contract now, but that new person coming in, it's gonna take them a long time to get
That's what I'm,
to this part of it.
that's what I'm thinking.
So we
about,
need to have a
even though
confidence.
That's not about the contract.
Yeah,
I know.
I know,
We're all having thoughts.
I know we all have those thoughts, but
And we don't have an emergency situation on our hands. Is what we have right now
Yes, we do. It's
ideal?
called fire.
Well, yes, that is an emergency situation. I agree with that. We don't have an emergency situation
I
for
disagree
lack
with
of
that.
representation. I respect that.
I disagree strongly with that. We do have an emergency. It may not be the same as the fire, but we need to have, we have all the things happening this summer that are coming up. We're gonna have an awful lot of questions regarding the police department and property owners, et cetera, et cetera. I think we do, in fact, have a pending emergency. And I think, to be honest with you, that the city attorney is gonna have their hands full. And I think we need to get on this.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
You already did.
I'd like to make a motion for an amendment.
Okay,
I move that on page 1, commencement date and term, number C, that the term of this contract shall expire on, I'm going to say February 28th, 2022 is next year, correct? Now, that does not mean that services cannot extend beyond that. It just means that is the extent of our contractual obligation. I so move.
second?
I don't hear a second either.
Any second? No second.
Thank you. Do you want to make a motion on it? Does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, we'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
Making a motion to amend page 1, item C, under commencement date term, to read, term of this contract shall expire on, I'd say March, so at least we have 3 quarters. March, end of March, March 30, 31, I don't know what it is.
31st.
March 31, 2022.
I'll second that.
Does your husband have to have?
discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Public discussion on the amendment? So what they're doing is changing it, this original contract was a 2-year contract. What they're doing is they're cutting it back to, 3/4 of a year,
3/4 of a year, not even 1 year.
not even a year.
Say, could you, I couldn't hear you, I got an air conditioner.
I'm sorry, Kevin. So they're what the amendment is bringing up is that they're taking away the 2-year contract and they're making it, this contract will terminate on March 31st, 2022. So it would be approximately 3/4 of a year. Any public comment on the amendment? Okay. Roll call vote.
Lyman,
Yes.
Mahan,
No.
Westwood,
Yes.
Whistler.
Yes.
Okay. Amendment passes.
I would argue that it didn't pass. I hate to say it, but do we get any free bono work from an attorney as a sample? He can look at one paragraph and tell us what it said. I'm just kidding. We don't need it. I read English and speak it. I've been doing it most of my life.
I think we will carry on as I read that, and you can challenge me after this proceedings.
That's fair. I hate to do that, but I think that's fair.
So we're back to the original contract, public comment on the original contract. Dave?
Mayor, I move to amend on page 4, termination of contract part B, to strike the second sentence in line with the recommendation from Sam Painter.
I'll second that.
Second that.
Any discussion on that? Moved and seconded, public comment on that. What, you want to read what they're striking, Lonnie?
Termination other than for cause or at the end of the contract term by employer shall result in a compensation package of 6 months of the annual salary in addition to the outstanding accrued vacation and sick leave employer is obligated to pay pursuant to Montana law.
Any public comment on striking that part? Yes, Kevin.
Yes.
State your name and your address, please. I forgot to set the ground rules.
I was prepared to do it. I remembered my address today. My name's Kevin Owens. I'm at 2113 Grizzly Circle. I knew this was on your agenda tonight because I've been reading the Carbon County News. Thank you, Alistair. But I know you've been wrestling with citizen commissions with the police, and this attorney's issue has been a hot topic here now for the last several months. But I just want to add a personal perspective because I've worked both in the public and private sector, and I've worked with attorneys in-house and I've worked with them out-of-house. And from a citizen's perspective as well, when I looked at the city, you folks are running business down here. And you need to really define, and hopefully you're all on the same page as far as what the city attorney is supposed to do. You want them just to prosecute and defend the city, that's a totally different skill set, but you need to do that. But in my use of attorneys over my career, it's a heck of a lot more than that when you're running a business. And in this particular case, I would strongly suggest, and you found somebody that I don't know, but apparently you all agree he's capable of doing the work, is that you need to get somebody that's part of the management team of the city. And it's well beyond prosecuting and defending the city. They need to be, as the contract is structured, to be in those management meetings with department heads on Monday morning. The primary job, the best attorneys I've had in the past have come in and tutored my staff on how not to get into a lawsuit, how to avoid personnel lawsuits. Best attorney in the world. So I don't want to call after you've done your damage. But I see that role as really important to the city. He's got to be an integral part of that management team on Monday morning, so he knows what's going on in each of the department heads, whether there's a liability red flag or not. So I don't agree that the city needs a full-time attorney, but they need somebody watching, integrated with the department heads as a resource. Here's something on Monday morning, well aware that they're working with the department head and getting responses. So you need that for liability protection. I do agree that there needs to be a 2-year contract. In my professional life, I wouldn't go into something with big on a coat on that sort of thing. You need to provide some continuity with a provision. Here's the important part you're missing, is in that contract, there needs to be a 60-day notice by either party of termination of the contract or cause or something like that. That protects both of you. You're all great people, but believe me, you may not be a bed of roses to work with. And that works both ways. So protect yourself in that regard. It's fair to both parties. But give the guy a chance to do his work for the city. Because we need somebody in there, and we need them on that Monday morning meeting. That's very important. I think the city really needs that. So, well beyond prosecuting and defending. So just my 2 bits. Offer you from experience, so thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounded like 50 cents worth to me.
Any other comments from the public on contract or the termination part?
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
Question?
Okay, roll call.
Lyman,
This is on the amendment to strike the termination other than for cause part
This
on
is
page 4.
on page 4, yeah. For the amendment, yes, yes.
Mahan?
Yes.
Westwood?
Yes.
Whistler?
Yes.
Back to the original motion.
In the interest of time and awareness that there are folks that have other things going on outside, I'd like to call question and just have a quick discussion if we need to have additional conversation or if we're ready to take a vote. So I call question on the original motion.
Okay, and I'm gonna open it up to the public also. We need to do that. Any public comment on the whole contract. Please state your name and your address.
Reverend Pamela Peterson, 610 South Broadway Avenue, Red Lodge, the pastor of Red Lodge Community Church. Mr. Mayor and our elected council members, I address these comments to our city council. The great theologian and Protestant reformer Martin Luther is often quoted as saying that no matter what your vocation, even if it is as a street sweeper, you do your best at whatever it is. City council members, your vocation calls you to be the best city council members that you can be. In both my professional career and personal life, I have served on numerous boards and councils throughout New York State, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and now Montana. I know what it takes to be a member of a volunteer council. I know what it takes to do the work, the determination, the dedication to learn all of the expectations, parameters, protocols, and responsibilities of your role. And I deeply appreciate all of the thankless hours that you spend in that work, determination, and dedication to your role as city council members. I would like to think that you have sought training in your vocation. You've learned the responsibilities, including the limitations of your position, and that you hold each other accountable to these trainings and classes as well. For this, if you've done it, I applaud you. In this particular instance, you are charged by the city charter to approve the appointment by the mayor, the legal officer who shall serve as chief legal advisor to the council, the mayor, and all city departments, offices, and agencies. I had trust in you as council members that since you received the original notice of action required for approval of this appointment on Friday, June 4th, the same day I got it, that you took those 5 days prior to the June 8th city council meeting to request the contract that you now have before you, and that you would have studied it, asked questions, noted your concerns. And it was apparent as I observed the city council meeting that night that you didn't do that, nor did you take responsibility for not doing it. Imagine my disappointment as a citizen of Red Lodge when some of you refused to support our mayor, someone who puts in unending hours of training, research, effort to be the best mayor that he can be, and the search committee and all of their hard work, and your council representative who put in many hours in bringing the best possible candidate for city attorney to you for your approval. Now, I know that some of you are putting forth tremendous effort to learn how to exact change. Our city needs all of you to do that. Going forward, I trust you will no longer thwart each other's efforts at developing communication, but rather you're going to support each other and make what is best for Red Lodge citizens your vocation. I implore you, get your backs off the wall that you've been pushed up against. Take the first steps towards the middle ground through better communication, and that means learning what your protocols are and how the laws read. If I know it, you need to know it. You begin doing that by approving the appointment of this city attorney tonight. So as a team member, as Kevin said, he will be on your team. And I'm shutting up. As the great prophet Martin Luther King Jr. said, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. Let tonight be the right time that you come together to begin making every effort to do the right thing, the right way, all the time, and vote in favor, every one of you, for this contract. Thank you.
Here, here.
Any other public comment? I guess the only other thing that Teresa said was the March 31st, 2022 date. Did we vote upon that?
We did, it was a 3-1.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so that'll be in there. The question has been called. Second on the question?
Yes, I second it.
You seconded that? Okay. Let's move to a roll call vote.
Simon,
Yes.
Mayhem,
Yes.
Westwood,
No.
Whistler.
Yes.
As I read in our rules of procedure, I will take that as a vote, a positive vote, to make the changes to the contract and move forward. I will also talk to the county attorney Alex Dixon on the exchange of services. Thank you very much. Move to just an open public comment period. Any public comments? Any public comments? Tom, how about number 5 on the agenda?
I'd, make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Help you with anything else?
No,